Hi, everyone. Well, I am very excited today because I have a special treat for you. I have someone very special with me today, Lauren Carrera. She is one of my certified facilitators. She's a neurocycle certified facilitator, done extensive training with me, and has been working with people individually for the last almost 2 years now, helping them on an individual basis work through the neurocycle in different sessions. And she's going to tell you about how that all works at the end. But I wanted her to chat with us today because she is so vulnerable and open and honest about some issues that she was going through that actually brought her to the neurocycle system. And so she's going to talk about her marriage and about how the neurocycles helped her. She has tremendous insight and is very vulnerable, honest, and open, and has really helped so many people. Lauren, it's such a pleasure to have you joining me today, and I'm so excited to hear what you've got to say.
Good. Hello, y'all. It's so good to be here. I love what the neurocycle has done in my life. Obviously enough to become a facilitator and to dedicate walking other people through this process. It has transformed things in my life, stubborn wounds that I no longer had a pathway forward. Brené Brown talks about hope being the intersection of a pathway and a destination. And there were just so many years in my marriage where I couldn't see the destination anymore because I didn't have a pathway. And the neurocycle was the pathway forward. And so I would just love to get into a little bit more of how that worked for me so you can understand how this is available to you.
Fantastic. That is so amazing. Lauren, this is amazing. So let's just dive in and hear what you've got to say and tell us your story and tell us the highlights and let's begin the conversation.
Wonderful. Well, I married my high school sweetheart and we dated long distance for 4 years, very long distance for 6 months when I went to Bolivia, came back, got married, started life, and, we're full force, excited about, building our careers, moved to Southern California. We're working jobs that we loved, but there were patterns that started building, right?
Yeah.
As we all experience. And if you would have asked me at the time what the pattern was, I would have said, well, my husband forgets things and doesn't plan ahead, and I do the legwork and pick up the pieces. And it would have been so prideful and arrogant, but not super untrue. So the problem really came when I started to feel like this quirk of his, the struggle of his became a character defect. And it began, to be more hurtful when it wasn't just forgetting the beach towels, it was forgetting the diaper bag or what we had planned for my birthday. And I started building, in neurocycle terms, a toxic thought around this man. And this man who I loved and adored at some point. And we talk about in neurocycle terms, how your toxic thought has a perspective, how you can see the world today because of it. And my perspective was overwhelmingly negative. And, that impacts everything.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing so lonely as being lonely in a marriage.
Terrible.
And yeah, the strife. I remember one day crying to myself and thinking, why am I so upset that my husband doesn't know where the chili powder goes? Like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
And so what happened is that I entered into something called negative sentiment override. So the Gottmans are research marriage giants, and that is what they call this perspective taking hold and taking over. And honestly, I couldn't really find a way out. We did some counseling. Some of it was helpful, some of it was not. And it just felt like we were going. So grateful to plug into a podcast one day and hear an interview with Dr. Leaf. And I remember thinking to myself, I think this might work. I think this is my next step. So, bought the audiobook that day, listened to it the whole week as I packed up my house because we were moving from California, and just decided that, what do I have to lose? Like, maybe this could work.
Yeah.
So what was fun is that I started my neurocycle with the attitude of, I'm going to prove that maybe this doesn't work. which is
Oh
so
my
great to
gosh.
relate to clients who are in a kind of a
Yeah.
hopeless place. And they're
Yeah,
like,
totally.
what is this going to work? And I'm like,
Done all of it already. That's a common thing. Sorry to interrupt you there, but it's like, I've done this all. I've done this, all these little things that you're going to tell me to do. I've tried everything. So yeah.
Yes. And it can be so discouraging. And I uniquely thought this is not going to work because my toxic thought is not about me. It's about my husband. And so just to give you permission, if you're struggling in your marriage and the toxic thought that you have really identified is about the other person, that's a great place to start.
Yeah. A really good place.
So that in itself, identifying the toxic thought was such a relief. I, was able to understand it. It wasn't just that he, was forgetting things. It was that I felt deeply rejected every time he did. So my toxic thought was, my husband doesn't love me enough to follow through, which was deeply painful. And so good. Anyways, okay. So many things. So step one is always gather awareness, right? So gather awareness gave me the permission to lean in a healthy way to the ugly, to get the ugly, messy mind out of my head, onto my Metacog, onto my paper, and start to process things that I had been suppressing for years. I think a lot of us think in order to honor our marriages or our spouses, we are to push away. And we can do that in the name of not wanting to talk bad or not wanting to dwell on the negative. But if we never deal with it, what we suppress becomes more toxic.
It just chases you. What you suppress doesn't go away. It just keeps coming back worse than before.
And in a marriage, it ends up coming out sideways somewhere else, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't just resolve. And then, wow, it would have been so much greater to pay attention to the initial warning signals and deal with it then let it build. So that gave me permission. The Navy SEALs say, embrace the suck. And so that really was a great starting place. And that's literally what I think as I am sitting down to do my neurocycle. Okay, it's time to embrace the suck. See what's
I love
really
that.
there.
I love that. That's such a great way of describing it because it does suck. So good.
So interesting. I had been having recurring nightmares about him or I having an affair and one of us leaving. And for months, I would just wake up weepy and sad or irritated and angry, guard up, such a terrible way. My poor mind was trying to deal with this. Yeah. And on day 4 of doing my neurocycle, my dreams stopped.
Wow. It's so interesting how day 4 is one of those days that these people start sleeping, dreams stop, nightmares stop. It's such an interesting pivotal point. So interesting you should say that.
It was as if my mind could breathe again. And I love experiencing this with clients when they're like, the anxiety hasn't followed me everywhere today. I opened it up in my neurocycle and I was able to put it away. And it's such a grace. And that was my experience. So that was beautiful.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
I became very aware during my neurocycle of some really amazing things that someone from the outside could have told me, but it wouldn't have been as powerful. It would not have been as meaningful to me if I did not uncover them myself. And I love that about the neurocycle process. So
I want you to emphasize that just a little bit. I know you're in the middle of your narrative and I didn't want to disrupt you there, but you said some very key issues and that is embrace the suck. I love that quote, but how you said that the gather awareness gave you permission because we often live with all kinds of belief systems that develop mindsets that lead us to think, well, I must just suck it up. I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm a this, I'm a that. I must just deal with it. And then also how you said there that how the neurocycle got you to take a responsibility because you can go for all the therapy and counseling and coaching and people talking to you, but at the end of the day, you have to do it yourself. And the neurocycle really does empower you to do that. I just wanted to emphasize, I loved how you said that.
The empowerment that happened was transformational. One of the things that I realized really early on, as I was going through my first 21 days, was that although my origin stories of pain were real from my husband, they touched on wounds that predated the marriage. It helped me zoom up, take on the multiple perspective advantage, get out of my tiny little box mindset of just what's hurting right now and see, oh, wow, that self-worth issue is from my past. That self-esteem issue is from these other situations that had nothing to do with this man. And I love to see when clients are going through the same process that they get that freedom of, okay, I actually can give a little bit more grace, especially to this spouse that I live everyday life with, that yes, they're pushing on my bruises and it doesn't feel good, but they might not know that those bruises are there. It's actually my responsibility to heal what's under those bruises. It's my responsibility to go heal those wounds.
Absolutely. That's incredible. So that started showing up. Let's quickly go back to day one where you embraced and then you went through the other steps. Do you mind doing a sort of, if you can remember back at day one, it's a long time ago because you did this a couple of years back. Just talk us through the rest of the steps and then carry on with the rest of your story because you've got such a great story.
Yes. So step 2 is always, you get to ask why. So, as I was going through these steps every day, you do all 5 steps every day, as you know, on our app. And the step 2 is asking why. So many amazing moments of revelation that happen in especially those first 21 days where I realized I really have a lot more to own in this story than I realized. I had been so focused on my perspective that I didn't realize how much my perspective was coloring everything in my marriage.
Wow.
It was coloring everything. And of course it was. I understand this now, and it's so easy to see from the outside. But for me to get to say, oh, wow. I remember one morning I had reflected on this for the first time. And I had just had this moment where I barked at my husband for not doing something I explicitly asked him to do. And it's not even like he didn't do it. He didn't do it yet. And I come to find out that it's because he was helping our son in the bathroom.
Oh,
So I'm like, what? Come on, Lauren. I realized in that moment that I was looking for damning evidence to support my toxic thought.
wow.
I wasn't being
That's
a
powerful.
good scientist. It's so powerful. I wasn't collecting evidence against it. And that is such a common theme. Once we get this negative sentiment override and we start seeing the person, any relationship really, but especially our spouse in this view, we start putting branches on our toxic thought and allowing it to become bigger and bigger. And there is always another way to look at the situation.
That's so true. It's so interesting what you said there with how your perspective was coloring how you were viewing and then looking for the data. I don't want people to miss all the gems you're dropping. You were basically looking for data in a biased way to confirm what you'd already made the decision that this was the problem. But the neurocycle didn't allow you to stay there. It actually made you question the data that you were using to stay in that place. And instead of revolving, you started evolving. You started moving forward. And so one of the things that the neurocycle, one of the many things it does is that as you gather awareness in that very specific ways, you go through these very sequenced ordered steps, you bring in order, and it doesn't allow you to, it's like putting up a mirror, isn't it? It's like you literally, you can know things. I mean, even myself, all these years later, Lauren, 40 years into this thing and using the neurocycle for all these years, if I don't do a neurocycle, I can tell you kind of what's going on. But it's when I do the neurocycle that I see what's going on, that I'll say, yeah, I knew that could be something. And then I do it and I see, oh my gosh, this is what I was doing. This is how I was looking at it. It takes you from the outside to the inside. And you start working from the inside out. That's just kind of how I describe it when I use it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, step 4 and 5 are always moving you forward, which is why you have permission to do step 1. You can embrace the suck because that is the only way through it towards healing. And because the neurocycle, it's not going to leave you there. It's not like you're sitting at coffee just talking badly about your husband and there's no action step. No, this is a healthy way to channel what is going on, because step 4 and 5 are always going to lead you towards what else and what now?
So good.
What else and what now? So powerful.
How did you find the step 3 where you do the sort of mind storm and write it down? So once you've gathered awareness, and I stress with everyone who's listening, it's so specific, as you know, going through, because those of you that are listening, some of you haven't ever used the neurocycle and you're just learning about this for the first time. Some of you are already using it on your own or even alongside a facilitator, but you are working through in a sequenced way, in a very organized way. You work through each thing, and each level is taking you down deeper and deeper. So now you gave yourself permission with step 1 to gather awareness, which brings it up. You started reflecting on the why, which started opening all kinds of doors. And then let's talk about the 3rd step. And then I love how you've described the 4th and 5th step take us forward. And in doing that, I want to also come back afterwards and talk about traditional kinds of ways of approaching healing and how this is what the cycle is doing. So let's not jump ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about steps 3, 4, and 5 in general. Wonderful. Let's talk about, then we'll follow that in terms of comparing to sort of traditional models of healing. And then let's continue with your story so people can see your growth. So that's 3 big things to do. Remember all of that, Lauren. I'm giving you a bunch of stuff to do here.
Here we go.
Okay. You ready?
Step 3. Oh, I love it. I love it. Why? 1, it organizes the mental mess in your mind, allowing you to make sense of yourself on paper. I
love that.
As clients sometimes feel self-conscious starting the process of making metacogs, and I just encourage them, hey, the messier it is, the more that has come out of your mind onto paper. That is the goal. And you get to then make sense of it. And so here's a beautiful thing about writing it down is that my neurocycle journal is full of the ugly. Okay. So if I went back and I opened that journal, I would disagree with most of my thoughts in there right now.
Brilliant observation.
And it is where I felt like I am going to write down what is going on, not to give it power, but so I can have power over it.
Beautiful.
And that is the whole process that then allows you to do the next 2 steps. So step 3, you get to make sense of it. You get to get power over it. And something really amazing happens where I feel the validation. It's almost as if I have been able to witness my own pain. And in doing so, say, okay, yes, that mattered. And what now? So that witnessing step is something that is really powerful in relationships when you are doing a neurocycle. For you to have a facilitator witness what you are going through is so incredibly comforting and powerful. But also any neurocycle you do, you get to bring that. And so this was just a catalyst for amazing conversations that I had with my husband. I didn't wait till I was done to start talking to him about this.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. So it's the 3rd step, one of the ways I always describe it, and you've basically explained it from an experiential level, is it helps you to tap into the depths of your non-conscious, the non-conscious mind, which is your spiritual soul level where all the stuff is, all the good, bad, the ugly, and the wisdom resides. So you're going into that depth, you're making that connection between where you're consciously operating from and where you are non-consciously being driven from, and you make that connection. But you can't just dive to that point. You've got to first do the embracing. You've got to embrace the suck. You've got to start doing that reflection. Each step is opening another layer. And then you get in and you get into that depth through the subconscious, into the non-conscious. And that's where you can start doing the work. And because that's kind of heavy going, that's why we shipped over quite speedily through the 4 steps. And you're not going to spend, a good sweet spot's around 17 to 22 minutes. When you first start, I know when you first started, Lauren, and most people do, it's around 35, 40, 45 minutes so that you can get used to it. But once you're in a rhythm, you can do these steps in a good 15, 20, 25 minutes for the first 21 days. Then, as you say, you're moving forward. So let's talk about step 4 and step 5, how that takes you to, you've brought it all up. One more thing about the third step, the right step. You stress there that you tell your client, just bring up everything that comes up. That is so important because there's so much that we're not aware of, and it's there and it's all connected. So whatever comes up is connected in some way. So this is not journaling some beautiful narrative. As you said, this is the stuff you don't even agree with anymore. It's just getting it out so that you have power over it. And your journaling comes, if you want to do it, in step 5. But this is not a journaling step. This is a capturing step, a mind storm and capturing from your mind storm. So you described that beautifully. So I'm just emphasizing for people so that they get they just get the beautiful things that you're saying. Okay, let's talk about step 4 and 5.
I love that because I love the capturing, because once you captured it, you decide, what now? What do I want to do with this? So when I was finally able to see, wow, hey, even if my husband was now today going forward perfect, I would still have to heal from these wounds from the past. This isn't an external, he's got to change situation. And this is where I thought my neurocycle might fail me, which is hilarious.
I love it. I love that you're being open and honest. This is what people experience. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, this is where I saw, wow, what can I do? And do I want to live like this anymore? Because I was able to process through the pain and witness it and go through the 5 steps and do the work daily, I got to the point where something really amazing happened. Up until doing my neurocycle, I had struggled with this idea of forgiveness. And I thought, I want to be a forgiving person. I want to be a forgiving wife. I believe in this concept of forgiveness, but I would have this nagging guilt when it would, something that I had worked on forgiving would come back into my thoughts and my pictures. Well, my toxic thought hadn't died. My toxic thought was alive and well. And so by the end of this process and through killing the toxic thought, my what now was, I'm going to forgive, and I'm still making the choice to forgive, and it's done. And it's dead. The toxic thought is dead. So, I mean, man, think of the implications of that for you, for your marriage, for what could it mean for you to one, stop feeling so guilty that you haven't successfully forgiven someone, but to get to really process so well that the neurocycle makes you able. And the forgiveness towards him, really, it shifted everything. I started feeling the ice melting off my heart. I started looking for all of the good he was doing. I remembered all of the ways that he was my partner, and his behavior changing would not have done that. So that is the power of the what now.
And that's the step 4. That's what do I do now? What's the next thing? And that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And that forgiveness aspect is so relevant because that's something that we all know, but it's like, it's knowing and doing is very different when it comes to forgiveness. We've had it so ingrained in society that we need to forgive. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but until you actually embrace it and understand why and what you're forgiving, it's very difficult to actually do it. And when you do it and you see, oh, I thought I had to forgive that, but actually I had to forgive that, but I didn't even know I had to forgive that. There's a lot of revelation that happens when you get that level of insight. And I also find, Lauren, unless I've done the neurocycle, I don't get to that depth. That's the thing. The neurocycle is directing the neuroplasticity in such a way that you're tapping into that psychoneurobiological mind-brain-body network, that you're getting to the depths of, you're getting beyond just this conscious, getting stuck in the conscious mind, what you can see and feel and hear and touch now, which is great, but you need to add the layer of what this now here is being driven by something, and what is that, and what needs to be fixed up. And that's, the neurocycle slowly takes, and you didn't achieve this all in one day. I mean, you've kind of jumped ahead on your story, so, which is excellent, but because it's great because people can see that this thing actually worked. But let's quickly come back to the 5th step, and maybe then if you could just talk about the 5th step. Have you finished the 4th? Do you want to still say some more about the recheck?
No. Yes, let's go on. Let's go on to number 5. And number 5, or step 5, Step 5, active reach. So it's called the active reach because you are actively reaching toward a new reality, a healthy thought that is growing and is beginning to take the place. And so the active reach met me in the everyday moments where I was triggered, So whatever you work on for that day, you then carry into your everyday life. And I would say the active reach is like the little coach on my shoulder. Remember what you're going for. Remember what you're going for. It's most effective when I was also using all of the other tools that you introduced us to strategically throughout the first 21 days. So I was walking around doing a ton of think, feel, choose. And some days that choose would be really long, and practicing 3-to-1 ratio all the time, trying to capture the positive along with whatever negative was coming up. So the active reach was reaching me forward and watering the healthy thought. So let me tell you what the healthy thought was.
Yeah, go for it.
This is something that sometimes feels confusing when we get to day 21. It becomes a little bit more self-evident what your healthy thought is. And it would have been a funny lie if I had just done the opposite. So my husband doesn't love me enough to follow through. I could have picked a healthy thought like my husband is amazing at following through and great at details. So no, that's not.
You would have been conning yourself.
Yes. And he doesn't need to be. So what became self-evident was my husband loves me and we're a good team. So it's pulling out what is the beauty here from what I see from all this work I've done. And watering that thought was so, so powerful that when you are able to faithfully do the active reaches, and I didn't do them perfectly. I'm a mom.
Yeah. You're busy.
There's a lot going on. And it doesn't matter if you don't do it perfectly, do it your best because it's still working and it's working so beautifully. So by the time I got to day 63, these active reaches had so cemented my healthy thought. I could see that going forward. We hit some rough patches in life's road, and so we had a miscarriage. And one of the first thoughts in my head was, my husband loves me and we're a good team. We then had an adoption fall through. And one of my first thoughts was, my husband loves me and we're a good team.
Beautiful.
We got placed with our adopted son, only a couple weeks later. And it was very complicated. And my first thought was, my husband loves me and we're a good team. All of these things that come up in life, it's so beautiful how the neurocycle has given me this gift of, I didn't just neutralize a toxic thought, but instead I got to build something that impacts me daily throughout the rest of my life. And I try to practice that active reaches from that neurocycle, even still every once in a while. It is amazing. It's so exciting. It's so exciting to get to see clients go through this process too.
It's so, the way you explain how those active reaches came up in those times of challenge, how it's actually shifted your mindset to be able to draw on those powerful things to carry you, things that seemed unrelated, but it was related. It carried you through, and that's as you said, the beauty of having the active reach being it's helping you to reach forward. But you said something very important here: is the generalization that's happened. So this is once you start this process, because neuroplasticity is happening regardless. We're always changing. Life every day it's filled with experiences, and those experiences are processed by our mind into our brain and body, and that's neuroplasticity happening. What you're doing with the neurocycle is you're directing the neuroplasticity. So instead of it just happening in a chaotic direction, which it was happening prior to you resolving this with your husband, you were gathering more and more data to go neuroplastically in the wrong direction, and then this stopped that process, and through a daily planned and guided process, you shifted the neuroplasticity in the right direction. It's the plastic paradox. We're going to go in either direction. Either you're directing it in the right one, or it's going on in the wrong one. It's not happening. It's happening. And so you've taken control, and because you shifted it into the wide for love nature of our mind, brain, body, the generalization was happening where you were able to then apply what you'd learned. But Lauren, you didn't stop there. You carried on doing, once you'd done one neurocycle. Let's talk about the continuity of, as you finish one, how two aspects. And haven't forgotten about coming back to compare to sort of traditional types of healing, but I want to talk about that you continued as a lifestyle working on a big issue, but also the generalizability of these 5 steps in the moment. So like maybe your kids freak out or this happens and you've got to get yourself back on track. So can you talk about first of all, let's talk about the continuity, how you continued as a lifestyle. So you're always doing a neurocycle. A lot of people think, oh, I did a neurocycle. I've done 63 days. It's done. It's not done. Either there's more of that or there's something else. And then let's talk about how you use it quick and fast in the moments, in the day-to-day struggles.
Well, I am always doing a neurocycle. I have it calendared to start tomorrow. My next one starts tomorrow. So you're not alone in the world of your toxic thoughts. It is so empowering to see something that hurt you so long completely go away that I thought, how could I not honor myself? In the context of marriage, it is so clear to me that I have these next issues lined up that if I could heal that part of myself, then wow, I could see how beautifully I would be a non-triggered participant in my marriage. You know, I could react better when these come up. So
Beautiful.
And my husband neurocycles as well.
Wonderful. That's
It
amazing.
didn't take me, very long. I hadn't even finished my first neurocycle before he really was like, this is changing you.
Wow.
And I want to be a part of this. So not to discourage you if you are in a place where your spouse is really uninterested, just keep doing your own work. It is okay. The health still produces more health in the other person, but there are so many instances where I work with a client and their health does that, inspires their spouse, and all of a sudden their spouse is ready to do a neurocycle as well. It's happened so many times. I love
that. That's beautiful.
So thinking in a neurocycle mindset. One of the most amazing things that happens as you are going through the 5 steps daily is you become what we call dynamically regulated. And the way I like to explain this is it's almost like the Matrix where everything freezes. And you
love that.
Drops and you pull it apart. So let me give you an example. So pre-neuropsych. Okay. So I'm in the kitchen and I see that the trash hasn't been taken out yet, and it's trash morning. And it's Monday morning, it's trash day, and my husband's been gone all weekend. Okay, so a pre-neurocycle response might have been something like, do you really expect me to do everything around here? Something, cutting and rude and not helpful, right? Yeah. So this is me with dynamic regulation, the 5 steps in action, right? So everything in the kitchen freezes. I notice myself, my shoulders are tense, my heart rate is rising. The trash not being taken out on the curb, I know is a dangerous scenario for me. It hits on multiple marriage triggers. I slowly stir my coffee and think, feel, choose.
Love it.
I know that the quickest response is going to be the most toxic. Coach myself through, engage your wise mind. Maybe I'll pull an active reach that I've done from my last neurocycle or that I'm working on that day. You deserve a great marriage. Be a part of the solution. That might be one of my active reaches. So I'm coaching myself, and then I'm asking, why is this triggering me? What's really happening here? Okay, he was traveling for work this weekend. That's a dangerous scenario. And we're remodeling, and I had to pick up some of the yard work and solo parent. Okay. When he travels, I can feel taken advantage of, but wow, I feel so much shame for that. Then I'm going through this deeper process. Why do I feel shame for that? I feel like I should be understanding. I should be fine. Oh, there's that next toxic thought I need to work on. I'm realizing, okay, the old shame script, and I feel ashamed for how worn out I am, like I shouldn't be, but my warning signals are just telling me something. What are they telling me? They're telling me I'm tired. They're telling me I need a break. Okay, this isn't about the trash. It's about me needing a break. Okay, and let's think through. It is a little bit about the trash. I hate feeling in charge of everything. We talked about this, but I need to give him a chance. Okay. I know it would really hurt my feelings. After doing all the yard work, he didn't take out the trash. Now I'm ready. Think, feel, choose. Now I can tell him, hey, babe, I'm exhausted. I need a break from parenting responsibilities. Like when can that happen today? And then I maybe need to take a deep breath again and tell myself it's okay that you need a break. This does not make you weak. Healthy people ask for what they need. That's another active rage. So I'm pulling those up. I'm coaching myself. And I add, hey, you still have reminders on your phone to take out the trash, right? Because it would just be really helpful for me to know that it's on your mental load and off mine if you could do it the night before. My husband then would undoubtedly facilitate me going to get a workout and maybe going to dinner alone with my book, and would gratefully say, thank you for telling me how you're feeling. I'm happy to take out the trash the night before. Connection instead of disconnection. And that is working through. That is what my mind, when I'm working through my 5 steps, is able to do. And
Beautiful.
And we call this emotionally intelligent couples is what they've termed it. And so really, this is couples who neurocycle, are emotionally intelligent couples.
Yeah, you are, because you're tuning into each other's needs and understanding your own and being able to operate in empathy.
And ask for what you need and get to the bottom line and share. And it's an opportunity to be vulnerable instead of when you're both defensive. There is no opportunity for that.
No, it's just going to lead to conflict. And then everyone feels stressed out and energy's drained, whereas this, you feel energized versus energy vampires sucking the blood out of you. It shifts the whole relationship, doesn't it? I mean, it just shifts.
And if this feels like, wow, that is so far from how we are operating, start a neurocycle. This will become more natural. It will become more obvious to you. It's also okay. And my husband and I give each other permission all the time. Like, hey, I can see there's something wrong here.
Go do a neurocycle.
I don't know what it is. I will come back. Can I have 15 minutes? Because I got to go right on my Metacog, or yes, my kids know, hey, they know the term neurocycle. They know the term Metacog. They know toxic thought. And they're like, yeah, it's okay to ask for a break and go figure out what's bothering you. Do you need to go neurocycle, Mom?
Look at the life skills you've taught your kids and look at how you've transformed. And, I have to say to everyone listening, this is 2 years ago that Lauren did the training with me. And she spoke about this, where she was in her marriage at the conference. At the training, she actually volunteered. We were looking and she came up and sat there in front of a group of people she didn't know that were in a training and volunteered to work through her issue. And if I listen to you now and if I listen back to then, there was so much pain and hurt and frustration and literally on the verge of, do I even want to stay with this man? Mm-hmm. And now look where you've grown 2 years later. I mean, this is just unreal. I'm almost tempted to go find that little clip of the recording, and we should pop that in, because even the way you look and, your eyes and your voice, and it'd be great for you to also go listen to that. But the growth that's happened. So I just want to emphasize with people, this is 2 years later. It doesn't mean that you're not going to experience change immediately. Lauren already said day 4 there was a change. So each day as you neurocycle, you will change and you will experience that change. But it's cumulative over time to eventually it gets to the level of quality that Lauren is describing, an almost idyllic relationship. there are issues, but they catch them fast, where they've modeled for each other, where they've modeled for the children, where they've created it as a lifestyle. And this is what we've done in our family as well. I mean, like my family had no option. I'm doing this kind of, we're immersed in it. But we see this so often. I'm sure you've seen this with your clients, and I saw this when I practiced for so many years. This is what we saw happening, and why it's so important for us to manage our minds as a lifestyle. That dynamic regulation, the active and dynamic regulation that you referenced earlier. Lauren, let's quickly talk for a moment about how you did go for traditional counseling. I know you've got a little bit of a background in these types of things, and we're not knocking any form of therapy here. Please, every kind of therapy is important. Every person is unique. There's so many different ways that you can get help. And this neurocycle does not replace anything. What it does is it makes it work more effectively. So the neurocycle is a system within which you can put in whatever you're doing. So if you are in therapy, the neurocycle is going to actually help you get more out of therapy, because you're going to know what you need. And therefore, when you go to the therapist or the counselor or the coach, you're going to be very equipped to explain, this is what I think I need, or can you help me see this differently, and that kind of thing. So we're not saying that that's what's happening, that we're not overriding other forms of therapy. But there is something you touched on right at the beginning, which is why I wanted to circle back to this. And it was that you'd been for the counseling and that kind of thing, but something different happened with the neurocycle. So let's talk a little bit more about what is it about the neurocycle in comparison to just doing traditional kind of therapies on their own? What does this add? What's the extra layer that this is adding? Now, I can explain it, but I'd love you to explain it and talk about it from your experience. Does that question make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I ponder it all the time. And I love that in the neurocycle, you are held accountable to a lot. You are sitting down with yourself daily. So the progress that you make is so much faster than a weekly conversation where you may or may not do your homework. And so that piece alone is so helpful. But it is so interesting. We are the only experts on us. And I felt, even personally going through it, so comforted knowing that I didn't have to explain how everything internalized inside of me to someone else so they could get to the next best question, to ask me to help me with the next best epiphany. I got to do that for myself.
Wow, that's beautiful.
It feels so empowering and honoring, and it gives you this sense of agency that you can heal, you can do this, and it's not dependent on someone else. Now, it is so helpful to have support. We were not meant to live life alone.
No.
We are better in relationships. And so, wow, I've seen the beauty of working with a facilitator and having them help draw out some more of those themes that maybe you're not looking at, that are clearly on your paper that you're not seeing, and, be that emotional support and help guide you through. I've also seen the beauty of many of my past clients have then gone on to, okay, I'm going to hit one thing in therapy now. Now I know that I need a specific help with this. And they have reported back to me, oh, my therapist was incredibly impressed with how well I knew my origin story and how much and so we got far fast, and it was such a benefit for them at that point. But it is a different process when you do it for yourself and you are able to ask yourself these questions. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Totally. And the key thing is that, you'll see a therapist or coach or counselor maybe weekly, or maybe you'll go through a burst of like a bunch of therapy together because something big's happened, and then but you live with yourself 24/7. You don't live with your therapist, coach, or counselor. You've got to deal with that marriage, those kids, your work, whatever it is that you're doing in your life. You living with yourself. You wake up with yourself at 3 a.m. having a panic attack, or can't fall asleep at night because you're anxious, or you're driving the car somewhere. And so to know how to manage your mind in those moments, to know how to be able to self-regulate and get on a stage, and like me, I talk in front of thousands of people and something happens and I've got to be able to get myself back and be able to get on the stage and talk or something like that. That's what the neurocycle is also doing. It's helping you to keep yourself actively and dynamically self-regulated so that you can do whatever it is. And then the key thing that you've said over there is you're doing it yourself. And that's the thing. We can walk the path with someone. We can help someone. We can guide them. We can facilitate. We need to do that. Like you said, community, we all know that loneliness, that doesn't work as humans. But at the end of the day, only you can make the choice. That's why I always emphasize the think, feel, choose. And for those of you that have noticed Lauren saying think, feel, choose, think, feel, choose, it's a little exercise you can do where it's just so powerful. Where you're breathing in for 3 and out for 7, but you're saying think, feel in the count in of 3, and then choose is a count of 7. And it's those words with the counting, and the oxygen does something incredible in terms of calming you and helping you to refocus, and just to not be reactive and that kind of thing. So it's those little techniques that you can use within that help you. But I think one of the other key things, and I'm going to quickly set the scenario and then ask you the question around this, that is that if you think of a plane that's flying, I often explain it like this. And we've got to prepare the plane, and you've got to get all the things they do to prepare a plane, the gas and check everything. And that's like in the neurocycle, there's a little section where you do a little bit of brain prep. So that's equivalent to that. Then you've got to take off. That's gathering awareness. It's taking off. It's gathering awareness of your emotions, behaviors, your body sensations, perspective. So it's taking off. And then you've got to fly. And that's your thinking. I mean, that's the reflect, the writing, and the recheck. And then you've got to do an action. You've got to land the plane. And so the cycle goes through. And what happens with a lot of the beautiful techniques that are out there that are so also useful that I encourage people to put into the neurocycle is that they take off or they prepare. And they don't do anything else. So they prepare, and they're very well prepared, meditation, whatever. But then they skip all the way to the active reach, and they get an affirmation or a great statement. So they've done some meditation or some great breathing, and then they calmer, and they get a statement, and they hang that on. And it gets them through the day, but it doesn't resolve the problem. So you've got to also do the stuff in between. So you can't just go from preparation to active reach. Some people are also pretty good at preparing and taking off, giving themselves permission, because there's so much encouragement in social media and everything to take off and to dive in. But people don't always do that, the hard work of reflecting, writing, and rechecking. Those are really hard. And that's what from my research, and I've said a lot, but I'd love from your own personal experience and your experience with your clients. Do you see that the middle, the preparation they get, even they get awareness they get once and the active reach makes sense, but that middle part, that's probably the hardest that people have to wrestle with, because they just want to give me the meditation, give me the active reach, but that stuff in between, that's the key that creates that transformation from being unempowered to being empowered. What would I've said a lot. Would you like to just pick up on from your life clients?
That's the key to the lasting change. So, I think even especially in couples counseling, where you're both kind of stating your experience and the therapist may be trying to help you translate or helping you get a tool, that does have a place and that is helpful. But necessary. That is often not getting to the heart of the matter. What is inside of me that is so hurt by this experience? What is the, doing those steps so I can take off and I can really examine, okay, wow, there is something more there. There were wounds from other people, and there were pain points that I learned to think a certain way. And that's why my husband is hurting me in this scenario. That's why his actions are hurting. And if I heal that, then I actually don't need the tools to fight better, because we'll be fighting less. and it gets to the heart of the matter. And same with my spouse. And he has really, really experienced that and had some really hard things that he had held on to and didn't know how to let go of, that now he's processed through so effectively that we don't need the the fighting techniques. I mean, we fight, of course, but
it's less. It's more regulated. You bring it back quicker. It's like all of us are going to have the arguments because that's life happens, and we get day-to-day stuff is challenging, and we kind of just okay. It's okay not to be okay, and in not to be okay moments, things will happen. But the difference is, and I find that as well with my husband and with just life, is I get back quicker. So you may fall off the horse, but you get back on so quickly because there's this, oh my gosh, I actually spoke with kind of an irritated voice, and that wasn't very nice because I didn't need that. And then it may be 30 minutes later, and then I'll call Mac because I'm out somewhere. So, I'm sorry, I actually used a really bad tone, and that was so totally unnecessary. That's what the neurocycle's done for me. I'm constantly aware that, and that's what I'm hearing you saying as well. Okay, Lauren, we need a part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's so many. You've been amazing. This has been fantastic. I want to just end with, for those of you that are listening, I know that you're definitely going to want Lauren back because this has been wonderful. And Lauren, I'd love to have you back because there's so many things we actually had planned to cover, which we haven't. But I'd love to just touch in 2 minutes. I'd love to just touch on some of the highlight points across the hero's journey, the 63-day journey, which is the length of time it takes to form a habit. And some things you need multiple cycles, especially when it's trauma and abuse. But 63 is your basic format with the first 21 days being deconstructing and reconstructing, and the second one practicing and stabilizing. So in terms of that journey, you already mentioned day 4, there was a major difference. And did you notice along the way any other sort of that just jump out? You don't have to think of all of them now because we'll come back to this, but what are some other things? Go back to the day 4, remind us what you found in day 4, and then were there any other trigger points or milestones, not trigger points, milestones on the journey from 1 to 63 that kind of pop out in your mind on your personal journey and that you've potentially seen with your clients as well?
It was such an emotional neurocycle for me that I want to encourage you, looking back, I did absolutely have these markers of growth that we're looking for. Had I been working with a facilitator, they would have been able to say, oh yeah, you're doing exactly what you should be doing right here, even if you are still feeling a lot of emotion and pain. And so that's normal, especially with such a dominant toxic thought. But on day 21, I remember feeling like, wow, I actually don't know if I emotionally feel that different. I'm still experiencing all these triggers. And yet my healthy thought was so clear to me. I remember thinking when I sat down to write, I don't know what this will be. And popped right out on the page, as it does sometimes. My husband loves me and we're a good team. Okay, wow, I will work on that. Ooh. There was a lot for me to process. And so I think really I experienced a really dramatic shift at day 53. And that can happen a lot, right?
Yeah, so yes, a lot for sure. Go ahead.
About week 8, all of a sudden my mind is opened to different toxic thoughts that are actually the problem that I'm putting aside for my next neurocycles. And I am able to experience a profound sense of peace. So yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to look back.
Day 4, you mentioned as well, there was that immediate shift on day 4. What was that shift again? Just remind the listeners.
That was when my mind could breathe and I stopped having nightmares.
There we go. So there's those things, and we see this. It's incredible. So often on day 4, then we also see around day 7, day 14, kind of those every 7 days. 21. 21 can also be a danger zone. I don't know if you've noticed that with some of your clients, and as you've done certain types of things, because it's different for every toxic thought you work on. Some tend to take a lot more work, the bigger stuff, and the progress is there, but it's like you said, it was still hard at day 21. Some people, they really feel, wow, I've got it, I don't need to do any more, and then they stop and then they revert back. So that's a big one. 36 to 42 is a big one in terms of tremendous insight at day 35, 36, where you start seeing the scope, and it can actually make you almost feel a little bit sad, depending on what you're dealing with, because you see what you've missed out and what could have been. And then there's a bit of a dip that follows that, and then there's this peak around 53 where you get, wow, I'm actually in the right. This has worked. And that's a very common thing around day 53, week 8 is this has worked. This actually didn't really believe it in the beginning, was a little skeptical, But there's, and you get less and less skeptical as you go along because you see the change. But day 53 is definitely around that week is definitely where people think, wow, I'm going to do another one. This is really doing something for me. There is a massive shift.
And the more neurocycles I do, the more predictable I see these moments. So then
that's amazing.
As I go, so I fully predict to have as I'm starting another neurocycle tomorrow, I fully predict that I will feel some hope and maybe even a false sense of, security at day 14, and I will feel pretty awesome at day 21. And so even if these markers feel like, oh, these aren't working for me, or these aren't true of my experience, well, hold on. Let yourself finish your whole neurocycle. Go back and look and see if perhaps they are more true than you felt. And know that subsequent neurocycles that you do, it will become more and more true as you heal more and more of your messy mind.
Beautiful. That's amazing. Lauren, thank you. We will, as I said, we will have you back to discuss more. There's so many other things we can dive into because you work with lots of different clients and there's lots of different issues and there's certain aspects we've discussed today we love you to go deeper on. But where can people, we know they can find you inside of the app. You can go in and you can look for Neurocycle facilitators and find Lauren. You can also find her on the neurocycle.app webpage, the Neurocycle Institute webpage. So we'll put the link in the details where you can find Lauren. But Lauren, tell them a little bit more about where else they could find you directly and how you work with people.
Wonderful. So Lauren Carreras is my Instagram handle, and you can message me there, LaurenCarreras, Lauren Carreras. And I am at donewithstuck.com.
Well, we'll put those details in the show notes. And generally you work for 10 sessions with people.
Yes. But if you're feeling hesitant about that, we are going to be in a position to, do some starter packages and help you get going. It's worth the investment in yourself. It is so life-changing. And, I had a friend, tragically, I lost a friend this week. And it just reminded me how thank you, how short life is and how we don't need to wait to heal. It is scary. So do it with someone if you're scared, but don't wait. There's so much healing and joy on the other side, as you can see, for your life, for your marriage, for your kids, all of it. So don't wait.
No, that's a really good point. Thank you for that. And yes, there's all kinds of packages that you can do. Sorry for your loss. I'm sorry to hear that. And so if people want to get hold of you, they know where to do it. Lauren, thanks for joining me today. And I really look forward to chatting again.
Thank you.